At the family barbecue, she flirted with my cousin openly. "He's hotter than you." I smiled and left with his sister. The holiday photos we posted destroyed her ego forever. I thought bringing Vanessa to my family's Memorial Day gathering would be a step forward in our relationship, maybe even a chance for her to finally appreciate the close-knit family I'd grown up with. I should have known better. I owned a vintage car restoration shop in Savannah, specializing in classic muscle cars and European sports models. It wasn't glamorous work. My hands were permanently stained with grease, my clothes smelled like motor oil, and I spent most days crawling under hoods and coveralls. But I loved bringing dead machines back to life, and my business was thriving. Vanessa, my girlfriend of 2.5 years, worked as a content creator for lifestyle brands, constantly photographing herself with expensive products and posting motivational quotes about living your best life. She made decent money, but she developed this habit of criticizing my blue-collar career while happily spending the financial stability it provided. "You're so talented, Ethan," she'd say, "but imagine what you could accomplish if you applied yourself to something more sophisticated." I'd learned to tune out these comments, focusing instead on the satisfaction of my craft. The barbecue was at my grandmother's estate, a gathering that drew 3 generations for food, games, and catching up. Vanessa had been on her best behavior during the drive over, chatting about her latest brand collaboration and asking about my cousin Blake, who she'd never met but had seen in family photos. "He's the personal trainer, right? The one with all the muscles?" she'd asked with what I thought was casual interest. I'd explained that Blake was actually a really good guy, humble despite his success as a fitness trainer and amateur bodybuilder, devoted to his girlfriend of 4 years, and someone who'd always been supportive of my restoration work. When Blake arrived with his girlfriend and his sister Iris, I was excited to introduce Vanessa to more of my family. That excitement lasted exactly 15 minutes. The moment Vanessa laid eyes on Blake, everything changed. She abandoned our conversation mid-sentence and practically bounced over to where he was helping carry groceries from his truck. "Oh my God, you must be Blake," she squealed, immediately reaching out to touch his bicep. "Ethan's told me so much about you, but he didn't mention how incredibly fit you are." Blake, being polite, thanked her and tried to include me in the conversation, but Vanessa positioned herself between us like I'd ceased to exist. "What's your workout routine? Do you use supplements? I'm always looking for fitness content for my Instagram." My grandmother, who was watching from the porch, raised an eyebrow at Vanessa's behavior, but I figured she was just being friendly in her typically enthusiastic way. Then came the comment that made my entire family go silent. We were all gathered around the picnic tables, 3 generations sharing stories and passing around photos, when Vanessa suddenly announced, "God, Blake, you're so much more attractive than Ethan. I mean, look at these muscles versus his grease-stained hands." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, including my 8-year-old niece and my 78-year-old grandfather. The laughter and conversation stopped completely. Blake's face went red with embarrassment. His girlfriend stared at Vanessa like she just suggested burning down the house. My mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. And my grandfather, a man who'd served in Vietnam and earned his living with those same grease-stained hands as a mechanic for 50 years, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, but profound disappointment that I'd brought someone so disrespectful into his home. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "that's not appropriate." But she was already leaning closer to Blake, asking him about his diet plan and wondering aloud why more men didn't take care of themselves like he did. She spent the next hour following him around like a lost puppy, completely ignoring his attempts to include his girlfriend in conversations and making increasingly bold comments about preferring real men who invest in their physiques over guys who spent their time crawling under old cars. When Blake excused himself to help with grilling duties, she positioned herself right beside him, taking selfies and asking him to flex for her camera. The worst part wasn't just her behavior, it was watching my family's reaction. These were people who'd known me my entire life, who'd supported my business, who'd celebrated every milestone with genuine pride. Now they were witnessing my girlfriend of 2.5 years treat me like an embarrassing accessory while openly pursuing my cousin at a family gathering. I was standing by the dessert table, watching Vanessa show Blake her fitness Instagram posts, when Iris approached beside me. Blake's sister had been observing the disaster unfold with horrified fascination, but there was something different in her expression, not just disgust at Vanessa's behavior, but genuine sympathy for what I was enduring. "I'm really sorry about this," she said quietly. "She's making everyone incredibly uncomfortable." I'd met Iris briefly at previous family gatherings, but we'd never had much opportunity to talk. She was usually buried in graduate studies, working on her PhD in environmental science. I knew she was brilliant, driven, and according to Blake, completely devoted to her research on sustainable restoration techniques. "Want to get out of here?" I asked, surprising myself with the boldness. "There's a classic car show happening downtown tonight. Much better company than this circus." Iris's face lit up with genuine interest, and I remembered Blake mentioning that she restored antique scientific instruments as a hobby. Apparently she had incredible talent for bringing 19th century microscopes back to working condition. "I'd love that," she said. "I've actually been wanting to see your restoration work for years, but Blake always said you were too modest to show it off." We slipped away through the garden while Vanessa remained completely absorbed in her performance, not even noticing as I retrieved my keys and led Iris to where my beautifully restored 1967 Mustang convertible was parked. The contrast between the afternoon's humiliation and the evening's magic was almost surreal. Iris loved everything about the car: the precision of the restoration, the attention to historical accuracy, the way I'd preserved the original character while updating essential mechanical components. "This is incredible craftsmanship," she said, running her fingers along the dashboard. "You can see the respect for the original designers in every detail." As we drove through Savannah's historic district with the top down, she told me about her own restoration projects, vintage microscopes and telescopes rescued from estate sales and brought back to perfect working condition. "There's something deeply satisfying about taking something abandoned and making it beautiful and functional again," she said. "Most people see old equipment as junk, but I see potential." The classic car show was everything I'd hoped: dozens of perfectly restored vehicles, their owners eager to share stories about challenges and triumphs. Iris was the perfect companion, asking intelligent questions about engine specifications and restoration techniques, genuinely fascinated by the craftsmanship that went into each vehicle. "You can tell which restorations were done with love versus money," she observed, studying a pristine 1969 Camaro. "The ones done with passion have this authenticity you can't fake." We spent hours wandering between displays, and I found myself explaining technical details that most people found boring, but Iris absorbed every word like she was studying for an exam. Dinner was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Savannah River, where we continued talking about restoration work and the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with your own hands. "Vanessa never understood why you loved your work," Iris said over dessert. "She complained constantly at family gatherings, said you were wasting your talents on dirty old cars when you could be doing something more prestigious." The comment stung because it was true, but hearing it from someone who actually appreciated craftsmanship made me realize how wrong Vanessa had been about what mattered. Meanwhile, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Vanessa. By the time we finished dinner, there were 52 missed calls and messages that escalated from confusion to anger to panic. "Where are you? Blake says you left with his sister. This is so embarrassing. You can't just abandon me here. I need a ride home. Everyone's asking where you went." The messages revealed everything about her priorities, not concern for my feelings or regret about her behavior, but anger that her actions had consequences and panic about being stranded without her personal chauffeur. When I finally responded hours later, I simply texted, "You seemed busy. Hope you found another ride." Her response was immediate and furious. "You're being so immature right now. Real couples work through problems instead of running away." I showed the message to Iris, who shook her head in amazement. "She spent the entire afternoon humiliating you in front of your family, and she thinks you're the one with the problem." What started as an escape from Vanessa's betrayal turned into something I hadn't expected: a genuine connection with someone who understood my passion for restoration work. Over the following month, Iris and I began collaborating on a project that combined our skills in ways that felt completely natural. She had this idea for documenting historical preservation techniques through photography and writing, creating content that would educate people about the importance of maintaining craftsmanship traditions. Most people don't realize that the skills used to restore vintage cars are the same principles I apply to antique scientific instruments, she explained during one of our weekend workshop sessions. It's all about respecting the original intent while ensuring functionality for future generations. Our Instagram collaboration started as a simple documentation project but quickly evolved into something beautiful. I'd photograph Iris working on a 19th century microscope restoration, her hands delicately adjusting brass components with the same precision I used on engine work. She'd capture me rebuilding a vintage motorcycle transmission, highlighting the artistry in mechanical precision. "Look at the way light catches the restored chrome," she'd say, adjusting her camera angle. "You've brought this back to exactly how it would have looked rolling off the assembly line in 1955. The contrast between her scientific approach and my mechanical expertise created content that was both educational and visually stunning. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Our joint posts started gaining thousands of likes and shares, with comments from restoration enthusiasts, history buffs, and people who'd never considered the intersection of art and mechanics. "This is exactly the kind of content Instagram needs," one follower wrote. "Real craftsmanship, real passion, real artistry." Vintage lifestyle brands began reaching out for collaboration opportunities, drawn to our authentic approach to historical preservation. Unlike Vanessa's superficial influencer content focused on product placement and lifestyle aspiration, our posts celebrated the actual work of creation and restoration. Meanwhile, Vanessa was watching our success with increasing desperation. Her own content, staged photos with expensive products and recycled motivational quotes, was getting a fraction of the engagement our collaboration generated. She tried to counter with increasingly provocative posts, but her follower count was steadily declining as people grew tired of her shallow content. "Authentic partnerships create authentic engagement," Iris observed, showing me the analytics from our latest post about restoring a 1940s telescope. "People can tell when content comes from genuine passion versus manufactured appeal." The breaking point came when a prestigious vintage restoration magazine reached out about featuring our work on their cover. They wanted to do a full spread on the new generation of restoration artists, highlighting how young craftspeople were preserving traditional skills while bringing fresh perspectives to historical preservation. "We've never seen collaboration quite like yours," the editor explained during our phone interview. "The way you combine automotive restoration with scientific instrument preservation creates this beautiful narrative about the universality of craftsmanship." The photo shoot was incredible. Iris and I working side by side in my shop, surrounded by restored vehicles and her collection of antique microscopes, with natural lighting that captured both the precision of our work and the genuine connection between us. When the magazine hit newsstands with our cover photo, Iris and me sharing a kiss beside a perfectly restored 1950s Triumph motorcycle, Vanessa's reaction was swift and predictable. She posted a series of Instagram stories clearly directed at us. "Some people need magazines to validate their worth. Real success doesn't need publicity. Authentic relationships don't perform for cameras." But the comments on her posts told a different story. "Aren't you the girl who was hitting on someone else's boyfriend at a family barbecue? This sounds like jealousy. Maybe focus on your own life instead of commenting on others." Her attempts to diminish our success only highlighted her own insecurity and the gossip that was still circulating about her behavior at the Memorial Day gathering. The magazine feature represented everything she'd wanted for her own content career: mainstream recognition, brand partnerships, and genuine engagement, but had never achieved because her focus was on image rather than substance. The social media collapse that followed was both swift and brutal. Vanessa's best friend Brooke, who'd been watching the entire drama unfold, finally reached her breaking point and called her out publicly. "Vanessa, everyone at that barbecue was disgusted by your behavior," she commented on one of Vanessa's bitter posts about fake relationships. "You literally threw yourself at Blake while his girlfriend was standing right there, and Ethan just handled it like a gentleman before finding someone who actually appreciates him. The comment got over 300 likes within hours, with dozens of responses from mutual friends and family members who'd witnessed the Memorial Day disaster firsthand. Finally, someone said it. The second-hand embarrassment was real. Poor Ethan deserved so much better. The public call-out opened the floodgates for everyone who'd been privately criticizing Vanessa's behavior. Blake himself delivered the most devastating blow when he responded to Brooke's comment with his own statement. "My cousin Ethan is one of the best men I know, and Iris is perfect for him. Sorry, Vanessa, but your behavior at the family gathering was completely inappropriate and embarrassing for everyone who witnessed it." Coming from the object of her obsession, Blake's public rejection was the ultimate humiliation. The comment went viral within their social circle, screenshot and shared across multiple platforms as the definitive takedown of Vanessa's version of events. Even the guy she was chasing thinks she's embarrassing, became the consensus among their mutual friends. What followed was an avalanche of truth-telling that had been building for months. Family members who'd attended the barbecue started sharing their own stories about Vanessa's disrespectful treatment of me throughout our relationship. My aunt posted about times Vanessa had mocked my profession at dinner parties, calling auto restoration playing with toys, while happily accepting expensive dinners paid for with my toy money. My cousin shared screenshots of Vanessa's old posts complaining about dating someone beneath her social status, while simultaneously using my workshop as a backdrop for her lifestyle photos. Even some of her own friends began distancing themselves, with former supporters posting things like, "I always thought something was off about how she talked about Ethan," and "Real queens don't tear down their kings." The professional consequences were immediate and devastating. Her follower count dropped by 40% in 2 weeks as the drama spread beyond our immediate social circle. Lifestyle brands that had previously worked with her began quietly terminating contracts and partnership agreements. "We prefer to work with influencers whose personal brand aligns with our values of respect and authenticity," one major home decor company posted when questioned about ending their collaboration with Vanessa. Several other brands followed suit, citing concerns about being associated with someone whose behavior had become publicly problematic. Vanessa tried desperately to control the narrative, posting long explanations about being misunderstood and claiming that people were jealous of her success, but the damage was irreversible. Her engagement rates plummeted as even her remaining followers grew tired of the constant drama and victim playing. Comments on her posts became increasingly hostile, with people calling out her hypocrisy and entitlement. "You made your bed, now lie in it." Actions have consequences. Maybe learn some humility and accountability. The influencer career she'd built over 3 years was crumbling in real time, and everyone could see that her downfall was entirely self-inflicted. Meanwhile, Iris and I continued gaining followers and brand partnerships, our authentic content and genuine relationships serving as the perfect contrast to Vanessa's manufactured drama and shallow priorities. The universe had a funny way of showing who deserved success and who was just playing pretend. The professional implosion reached its peak when Vanessa's collaboration with a major home decor company completely backfired in the most ironic way possible. She'd been contracted to create content featuring authentic vintage charm in modern living spaces, which required her to photograph restored furniture and antique pieces for their fall campaign. The problem was that Ethan's restoration workshop, which she'd used as a backdrop for dozens of her lifestyle posts during our relationship, had just been featured in their competitor's magazine spread with Iris. When the home decor company discovered that their rival publication had showcased the same workshop with different models, they immediately demanded answers about the conflict of interest. "We contracted Vanessa specifically for her access to authentic restoration environments," the brand manager explained in a public statement after terminating her contract. Learning that these spaces belonged to her ex-boyfriend, who's now working with our competitors, creates an untenable situation for our brand integrity. The contract cancellation came with demands for returned merchandise and breach of contract penalties that wiped out 3 months of Vanessa's income. More devastating was the industry blacklisting that followed. Other home and lifestyle brands quietly removed her from consideration for future campaigns, citing concerns about authenticity and business relationships. Vanessa's desperate response was to confront me directly at my workshop during a busy Saturday morning. I was working on a 1965 Corvette restoration when she burst through the front door, her face flushed with anger and desperation. "You're sabotaging my career," she screamed, loud enough that several customers and my employees stopped what they were doing to stare. "You knew that magazine feature would ruin my contract, and you did it anyway." The accusation was so absurd that I actually laughed, which only made her angrier. "Vanessa, I don't think about you at all anymore," I said calmly, not even looking up from the engine I was rebuilding. "My relationship choices are my own business, and if that affects your work, maybe you should have thought about that before burning bridges." What she did next crossed every line of sanity and legality. While I was explaining to customers that there was no cause for concern, Vanessa spotted Iris's collection of restored antique microscopes displayed in the workshop showroom, pieces she'd spent months carefully rebuilding and had loaned to me for the magazine photography. In a moment of pure rage, Vanessa grabbed a vintage brass microscope from 1890 and raised it above her head, clearly intending to smash it on the concrete floor. "Maybe this will get your attention," she snarled. Fortunately, my employee Jake tackled her before she could destroy the priceless instrument, but not before security cameras captured the entire attempted vandalism on video. The restraining order filing was swift and straightforward, with video evidence that made the case open and shut. But Vanessa's unhinged behavior became public knowledge when the security footage was shared on social media by witnesses who'd filmed the confrontation on their phones. "Girl tries to destroy priceless antiques because her ex moved on" became a viral sensation, with the video gaining hundreds of thousands of views and overwhelmingly negative comments about Vanessa's character and mental state. "This is what entitlement and narcissism look like when they collide with consequences," one popular comment read. "She needs therapy, not a boyfriend." Meanwhile, Iris and I received an incredible opportunity that represented the complete opposite of Vanessa's destructive behavior. A prestigious automotive museum in California reached out about creating a traveling exhibition called The Art of Restoration, where science meets craftsmanship. They wanted to feature our collaborative work as the centerpiece of a nationwide tour that would visit major cities and educate the public about preservation techniques across different fields. "Your partnership represents exactly what we want to showcase," the curator explained during our video call. "The intersection of different restoration disciplines and the passion that drives people to preserve history for future generations." The exhibition would include live demonstrations, educational workshops, and a documentary about our work that would air on the History Channel. It was everything Vanessa had ever dreamed of achieving with her content career, except this was real recognition for genuine expertise rather than manufactured influence. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who'd followed our story. While she was attempting to destroy historical artifacts out of jealousy, Iris and I were being celebrated for preserving them with love and skill. 6 months after the Memorial Day disaster, I was standing in my workshop admiring a custom engagement ring I designed for Iris, when my phone buzzed with the kind of notification that made the entire journey feel perfectly orchestrated. Blake had posted a photo from the vintage car rally in Monterey, California, where I just proposed to Iris beside a beautifully restored 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO that had taken me 8 months to bring back to life. The ring itself was a work of art, a brilliant cut diamond set in a band I'd crafted from restored vintage car parts, incorporating elements from a 1955 Porsche 356 and a 1967 Jaguar E-Type. "When you find someone who understands that true beauty comes from preserving what matters," I'd said as I got down on one knee, "you never let them go." The proposal video, captured by the rally's professional photographer, had already gained over 100,000 likes within hours of Blake posting it. Comments poured in from restoration enthusiasts, family members, and followers who'd been invested in our story since the beginning. "This is what real love looks like. That ring is incredible. Only a true craftsman could create something so meaningful. Iris is so lucky to have found someone who values substance over surface." Even celebrities and influencers in the vintage lifestyle space were sharing the video, praising the authenticity of our relationship and the craftsmanship that went into every detail of the proposal. Blake himself delivered the most heartfelt response when he commented on his own post. Watching two people who truly understand and support each other's passions find love gives me hope. Ethan, you've always been my favorite cousin, and Iris, you've found your perfect match. The comment gained more engagement than any of Vanessa's recent posts combined, with thousands of likes and replies from people celebrating genuine partnership over superficial attraction. This is what healthy masculinity looks like, supporting your family and celebrating real accomplishments, wrote one popular response that perfectly captured what had made Blake so different from the fantasy version Vanessa had projected onto him. The devastating blow to Vanessa came when she learned through mutual friends that my entire family had completely embraced Iris in ways they'd never embraced her. My grandmother, who'd witnessed Vanessa's disrespectful behavior firsthand, had gifted Iris a family heirloom necklace that had belonged to her own grandmother, a piece of jewelry that symbolized acceptance into the family's legacy. My parents had openly stated to relatives that they considered Iris the daughter they'd never had, praising her intelligence, kindness, and genuine appreciation for family traditions. Iris fits with us in ways that feel completely natural, my mother had told my aunt, who'd shared the comment with friends. She asks about our stories, remembers our birthdays, and treats Ethan with the respect he deserves. Meanwhile, Vanessa remained permanently disinvited from all family gatherings and blocked on every social media platform by relatives who'd lost all respect for her after the Memorial Day incident. Her attempts to maintain connections with my extended family had been firmly rebuffed, with my cousins and aunts making it clear that her behavior had been unforgivable and her presence was no longer welcome at any family events. The woman who'd once thought she was entitled to a place in my family's future had discovered that respect and acceptance couldn't be demanded or manipulated, they had to be earned through consistent character and genuine care for others. The final humiliation came when Vanessa attempted to attend our engagement party, somehow learning about it through social media posts despite being blocked on most platforms. Security footage from the venue showed her being escorted away by hired security after trying to argue her way past the guest check-in, claiming she had a right to be there as Ethan's former girlfriend. Photos of her being removed while Iris and I celebrated inside with 300 friends and family members became viral memes within our social circle, perfectly encapsulating the difference between someone who belonged and someone who'd burned every bridge through her own choices. The audacity is absolutely stunning, became the most liked comment on the photo, summing up everyone's reaction to her desperate attempt to insert herself into a celebration that represented everything she'd thrown away through her own selfishness and entitlement. 1 year after the Memorial Day barbecue that changed everything, Iris and I stood before our families and friends in what had become the social event of the season. Our vintage-themed wedding was held in my restored workshop, transformed into a breathtaking ceremony space surrounded by gleaming classic cars and Iris's collection of antique scientific instruments. Professional photographers captured every detail for 3 major wedding magazines that had competed for exclusive coverage rights. We've never seen a wedding that so perfectly represents the couple's shared passions, the editor from Southern Weddings explained. The way you've woven restoration work into your love story creates this beautiful narrative about building something lasting together. The wedding hashtag Restored to Love trended locally for 3 days, generating millions of impressions and leading to book deal offers from publishers who wanted our collaborative restoration memoir. Comments poured in from celebrities, restoration experts, and vintage enthusiasts who praised our authenticity and artistic vision. This is what happens when two people truly see and appreciate each other's gifts, read one popular comment with over 10,000 likes. Real recognizes real, and this couple is the definition of genuine partnership. The coverage attracted attention from international restoration societies and museums who wanted to feature our work in exhibitions across Europe and Australia. Meanwhile, Vanessa was working at a budget nail salon in a strip mall across town, watching our wedding coverage from her tiny studio apartment while eating ramen noodles and scrolling through thousands of congratulatory comments from people she'd once considered beneath her social status. Her influencer career had never recovered from the public exposure of her behavior, and she'd been forced to take minimum wage work to survive after her family cut off financial support following the workshop incident. The contrast between her current reality and the life she'd thrown away was so stark that even her remaining social media followers began commenting with pity rather than admiration. Blake's wedding speech became the defining moment that everyone would remember, going viral across multiple platforms when he emotionally declared, "Ethan taught me that real strength isn't about muscles, it's about character, integrity, and finding someone who sees your true value." He looked directly at the cameras as he continued, "Some people chase what looks impressive from the outside, but my cousin found someone who appreciates the beautiful work he does every single day." The speech gained millions of views and became a TikTok sensation, with people using it as an example of what healthy masculinity looked like, while also serving as the perfect response to anyone who still remembered Vanessa's embarrassing behavior from the previous year. 3 months after the wedding, the final chapter of vindication came when Vanessa encountered Iris and me at a vintage market where we were signing copies of our best-selling book, Restored, Finding Love Through Craftsmanship. The line of fans stretched around the block, with people waiting hours to meet us and get their books personalized. Vanessa stood at the back of the line, looking haggard and defeated, wearing a faded t-shirt that was a far cry from the designer clothes she'd once flaunted. When she finally reached our table, I looked up to see genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time. "I'm sorry for everything," she said quietly. "I'm glad you found someone who deserves you." I graciously responded, "Thank you, Vanessa. I hope you find genuine happiness and learn to value what really matters." Iris added her own message with characteristic kindness. "Your behavior taught us both what we didn't want in a relationship. Thank you for the lesson." As Vanessa walked away with her signed book, clutching it like a token of the life she'd destroyed through her own choices, I realized that true attraction and lasting love come from mutual respect, shared passions, and genuine partnership rather than superficial comparisons and toxic competition. The woman who'd once declared Blake more attractive than me had learned the hard way that surface-level appeal means nothing compared to the deep satisfaction that comes from being with someone who truly appreciates your character, supports your dreams, and build something beautiful alongside you. 6 months later, when Vanessa finally moved to a different state to start fresh somewhere else, I genuinely hoped she'd learn to recognize and value authentic connections over manufactured drama and shallow pursuits.